Thank you for joining me today on Sewing for Dolls. I'm Deborah from Ooh La La Doll Boutique, and today we're working on a dress for Ruby Red, and the pattern is designed by Luminaria, and it's called Countryside Girl. Today we'll be working on the dress, and next week we will continue with the pinafore. This dress is easy enough for a beginner, so we're just going to start by attaching the back to the front. And the same with the lining. I'm using the same fabric. It's a lawn. So I'm just going to stitch a 1/4 inch on each seam. Now that I have the shoulder seam sewn on both my dress and its lining, I'm just going to press the seams open. Next, we're going to attach the lining and the front of the dress together. So we'll pin these together. Now that we've got our shoulder seam sewn and pressed open, we're going to match up the lining to the front of the dress, right sides together, making sure that our shoulder seams match up. And then we're going to stitch from the bottom along the neckline and back down the back, and we're going to sew along the armhole at 1/4 inch, and I'll be back after I do that. Now that I've sewn this, I'm going to pink around the neck and around the arms just to tidy it up. You could, if you don't have pinking shears, you could just clip it. Being a lefty, it's hard finding pinking shears that are left-handed, so I use right-handed, and it's a little bit awkward. Now we need to turn this in right side out. The easiest way to do this is to take the back, stick a pin in there, open it up, and push the pin through your shoulder seam. And do the same with the other side. Push out your corners in the back. And now we're going to press it. Now we're going to open up the front bodice and the back and attach them and sew up the side seam. Make sure that your seams match in the center and do a 1/4 inch seam along there. Now that our bodice is done, now that my lace has been sewn down onto the front of the skirt, I'm going to finish off the raw edges on each short end, and I'm going to do that on the serger. And then after that's complete, I'm going to fold it over 1/4 inch and stitch it down on either end. Draw through the end of your serger thread through your stitches. I only do this on the bottom because the top will be cut. Just trim that off. Now that I have the back seam sewn down, I'm going to do 2 rows of gathering stitch along the top of the skirt. With our gathering stitches in place, we're going to take the front of our bodice and find the center mark on the front of the bodice. Mark that. And then find the center of our skirt. Mine is marked with a, because I ironed it. So we're going to take that and match that right side of the skirt to the right side of the bodice and pin them. Take one edge and meet it up with the side seam. Match that up with the back edge. And then pull your top stitches and evenly space out your gathers. Once you're happy with the placement of your gathers and how they're spread out, you're going to sew them together at 1/4 inch, and I'll be back after I've done that. Once that's stitched together, I'm going to pull out my gathering stitches. And now I'm just going to clean up some of these loose ends. Next, we're going to fold this over 1/4 inch. You can finger press it. and pin that in place. At this point you could top stitch it, but I'm going to sew it on with a blind stitch. It only takes a few minutes because it's such a short seam. Now I'm going to blind stitch my bodice lining to the skirt. I like to hide the knotted end in that corner. And I'm just going to grab the bottom and slide it through the lining. Pick up underneath your stitch line so that it's not visible on the front. And do that all the way across the top. If you're right-handed, you'll be starting at this end. I'm left, so I start here. Once you're finished, knot that off. I like to use a French knot, so 1, 2, 3. And pull it tight. And then take your needle and just slide it in between the bodice and your lining, making sure not to go through, and snip it off. Now we're going to take the back. I'm going to overlap them by 1/4 inch. Just going to use my previous stitch lines as a guide. Pin it until we're 2 inches from here, so 2 inches down. So we're going to overlap them 1/4 inch until we're 2 inches from the bottom, the top. Just one of those days. So 2 inches from the bottom of the bodice. So we're going to overlap them to here. Stitch them up. Now we're going to top stitch just along here, making sure to back stitch at the bottom and back stitch here, just to make sure that it's secure and the dress doesn't rip apart. Now that we've got the back seam sewn on, it's time to sew on our buttons or snaps. It's your choice. I'm going to use sew on snaps, and I'm just going to add two. One at the bottom of the bodice here and one at the top. And I'll be back after that's done. Now I have my snaps sewn on and the dress is complete. Here's the finished dress. Join me next weekend when we work on the pinafore. Thanks for watching and hope to see you soon. Bye.